what time or times Mr. Robinson visited the UVU campus on September 10th?
Yeah, we were able to establish that Mr. Robinson had been on campus approximately 4 times throughout the day. And
would you mind relating what the doctor reports as the manner of death?
Yes, I misspoke. It does say homicide.
And then the immediate cause of death?
Gunshot wound of the neck.
Nothing further, Judge.
Evidence is being presented, so you nut jobs will shut up and quit lying to people for clicks, and finally people can get real evidence that I've been telling y'all was true from the very beginning. But at least you can get evidence from an impartial source. When I say impartial source, it's in the court of law.
Before we get back to the show, I want to tell you guys about Synergy. If you're tired of energy drinks that spike you up, make you jittery, and then crash you later, Synergy is built differently. Synergy Day gives you clean, steady energy and focus with natural caffeine from green tea. Synergy Night helps you wind down so that you can rest and you can wake up clean, not groggy. It's a simple day and night system made with natural ingredients, no sugar spikes, and no synthetic stimulant overload. Go to SynergyLife.com and try it for yourself. Better energy, better rest, better rhythm.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen and ladies? Welcome to the Officer Tatum Show. Sorry for the background. Hey, we have to improvise, okay? For those of you who know, I'm out here in Utah at the trial of Charlie Kirk's preliminary trial, or pre-trial is what they call it. And I got a lot of things that I want to say about this. And some of you guys probably saw the live stream earlier. We're broadcasting the entire trial on our show. But I also stepped in, during the lunch period and gave my synopsis of what I saw. But let me just tell you guys, if this is the first time watching it, man, it was a surreal experience, man. Being there with Erica and the family, it was emotional. Just my heart breaks for Erica. My heart breaks for what she has to go through when she did nothing but be a good wife, and a lunatic decided to kill her husband. Now, I'll say this off the top because I want people to be very clear about this, because court proceedings in the United States of America, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. And so Tyler Robinson is innocent until he's proven guilty in the court of law. But let me tell you some things that I observed in the court that should debunk a few things that people are saying on the internet. The first thing is, some people are saying that Tyler Robinson was never on campus. Well, we have evidence now of investigators who have seen him on campus over 4 times, or around 4 times being on campus, before the shooting, during the shooting, and after the shooting. There's a few other things that caught my attention, but we'll go through them methodically here after a while. But it was a very interesting experience, man. Seeing Tyler Robinson in the courtroom, knowing that he allegedly took my friend's life is very difficult to see, and I can't imagine from the family's perspective how they're just dealing with having to look at him the entire time. I mean, any smirk, any look, any smile, anything outside of looking distressed is probably very stressful for the family. And there was a lot of questions you guys asked me earlier, and I answered them, so you got to go back and look at that. But there was a few other things. I got my notes. I don't know what I did. I put my notepad over there, but I got my notes that I had. Hold on one second. Let me get a couple notes for you, because I want to make sure I touch on a few things, because I think it's very telling. One of the things that I think is important to note is the manner of death from the autopsy. But I think it's more important right now for me to establish the difference between trial and the pretrial. I think that's something that we need to establish. The pretrial's burden of proof is just probable cause. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt like it is in a regular trial. It's not the preponderance of evidence like you see in a civil trial. It's just the burden of proof is if a reasonable person with these circumstances would believe that this person could have done the crime. That's all it is. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not that you got to prove it in this pretrial hearing. It's the prosecution presenting evidence that a reasonable person would believe, and in this case, the magistrate, the judge, is going to have to make that determination that is it reasonable that with all the evidence that's been presented that we could take this trial forward, or we take this forward to trial. One of the things that I thought was very interesting, besides him being discovered on campus multiple times, 4 times to be exact.
With Tyler Robinson's personal information, were you able to expand your search at all?
Yes, once we knew a vehicle that we were looking for and we had an actual image of the individual, then we were able to use that video footage to try and track that specific individual.
Okay, and I'm sorry, let me clarify. So when I said expand your search, I'm referencing the UVU surveillance video.
Yes, we were able to.
Okay. And were you able to identify in that expanded search, did you believe you located that challenger?
We did, yes.
Okay. Were you able to determine at what time or times Mr. Robinson visited the UVU campus on September 10th?
Yeah, we were able to establish that Mr. Robinson had been on campus approximately 4 times throughout the day, twice before the shooting, the time of the shooting, and then after the shooting later in the evening into the early hours of the 11th.
One of the things that I thought was very interesting, besides him being discovered on campus multiple times, 4 times to be exact, was the autopsy. A lot of people are lately saying that, oh, it was a microphone and all this other stuff. The defense is not even arguing that.
And would you mind relating what the doctor reports as the manner of death?
Yes, I misspoke. It does say homicide.
And then the immediate cause of death?
Gunshot wound of the neck.
Nothing further, Judge.
A lot of people are lately saying that, oh, it was a microphone and all this other stuff. The defense is not even arguing that. At least so far, they haven't argued that whatsoever. It has been shown from the prosecution that the autopsy was there. It was presented in the court, and the autopsy yielded that it was a homicide. His cause of death was a homicide, and that the manner of death was a gunshot wound to the neck. So for everybody out here still talking about all that other stuff, lying to you because they're not here. They couldn't bother to be here. They couldn't bother to cover the story, and they're gonna say all this crazy stuff. But I think the judge in this case has been incredibly fair. If you watch the live stream, the defense is objecting to almost everything that they could possibly object to, and it's the same soup warmed over. You know, in my opinion, all the defense is doing is trying to muddy the water so you can't get a clear perspective of what the prosecution is trying to lay out. Because the more that they go object, and they got to go through the rigmarole, object, then therefore the people that are watching it can't continue with the line of questioning that leads you to understanding where the prosecution is going. But the evidence is coming out slowly but surely. They're building the case. I think that it seems to be a very fair trial at this point. I got to give my hat off to the judge. I said it a few seconds ago, but I think the judge has been very fair in the way he's been treating the case. I think the prosecution is bringing up incredible points, and I think the defense is doing what they can to try to preserve Tyler Robinson. And we'll see as the trial moves forward what new evidence is brought about. The reason that I decided to do this live is because if any of you guys have questions along the way, I'd love to answer your questions because there's so many things that went on today. It was 8 hours of hearing testimony and all of that other stuff, and I can't think of everything at once. I wrote it down, but I didn't write it succinctly enough because look at that chicken scratch. But anyway, I just want to touch base on that, talk a little bit about the trial, but it is very interesting, and I hope that you guys watch it. We'll have it live on my channel every day of the trial, and I'll try to pop in and give some updates on it. But ask your questions as we do the live stream. If you have some things that you want to ask, if you have questions about what happened here, this, that, and this and other. I know people brought up the holster thing. They haven't even addressed the holster thing yet, which is something that I heard for the first time was there was a holster found like with a handgun. It was a handgun holster that was disregarded, nobody around it. I don't know if they collected it for evidence. There's no evidence that would lead to believe that somebody used a handgun in this situation. So that was one thing that was brought up in the court that I'm waiting to hear back from, or at least hear the defense pose an argument about, and maybe the prosecution can explain. One thing that happened today in the trial that I think people who are naysayers are going to put out there is that the video footage of Tyler Robinson, or allegedly Tyler Robinson, on campus in various areas, all the evidence and proof that they had of him being there, they made it into a compilation video, and there were some markers on the video that had like a circle or like a red dot, you know, kind of indicating where he's at on the camera, zooming in so you could see it better. The judge ruled that it wasn't admissible, without certain fact patterns to enter it into evidence. But tomorrow they're going to have an opportunity to put it in, and I think it's going to be very easily put into evidence once they do what the judge asked them to do, is doing it appropriately and putting it in without any question marks of the legitimacy of the actual video that was compiled. So I think that was something that came up, and if you're a naysayer, I would say that the naysayers are going to say, look, see, they didn't have the evidence. No, they're going to be able to put that in the evidence. I don't think it's going to be a problem whatsoever. Any question on the trial? Let's see. I think we got a couple more questions. Real quick, I'm going to answer them. I got my phone here. What was the feeling in the courtroom? For me, it was surreal. It was a surreal feeling, man. You're like, dang, it's crazy because you thinking to yourself, dang, I never thought I'll see the day that I'm in a courtroom regarding a trial, and this is a pretrial, because somebody I know in the movement got murdered, assassinated. You get what I'm saying? I never in my life thought I'll be at Charlie Kirk's pretrial because he was murdered by somebody. And then you're there, and then I can't stop thinking about Erica. I'm going to say that till I'm blue in the face, because I was with her in the trial. I was with her in the green room and in the family. And my heart breaks for her, because what does she do to deserve this, man? She gets married to a guy who's an incredible guy. She's an incredible woman. They're an incredible couple together. And then all of a sudden, a lunatic decides to kill him because they don't like what he had to say. And while other people are spending their weekends or week going to work, they're going to go home to see their family. They probably on vacation. They're going to do all that. Erica has to endure facing the person who killed her husband and sitting through the trial. This is pre-trial. Then she got to sit through the actual trial where they show evidence and talk about how Charlie was murdered. Anyway, I get worked up when I talk about it. That was the feeling in the courtroom. That's how I felt. It was like surreal, man, being in there and listening to what happened to Charlie. But it was also gratifying that finally evidence is being presented, so you nut jobs will shut up and quit lying to people for clicks, and finally people can get real evidence that I've been telling y'all was true from the very beginning. But at least you can get evidence from an impartial source. When I say impartial source, it's in the court of law. You can watch it for yourself and see what the prosecution is presenting and see how the defense objects it. Was Tyler Robinson's parents there? I couldn't tell. It appears that Tyler Robinson's family was on the very back row, but of course I didn't really see who was who. It didn't look like his mom was there, or I don't know what his dad looked like. So it was a couple men there that could have been his dad, but it looked like his family was there. They said at the very back, which I think is the customary way that they seat the families in this court. So it's not like they did it for any other reason, but I think the way they coordinated the court was that the family had to sit in the back. Why homicide, not murder? I think that's a good question. I think the difference is that this is how it's determined. If a homicide means that you were just killed by another person. A murder means that it was a targeted killing by a person, right? When somebody's, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody is doing an autopsy and they don't have a suspect, they can't argue that this was an intentional killing. They can only argue that this person was killed by another person, right? So let me just give you an example. So if you are walking down the street, somebody do a drive-by shooting, and it wasn't intended to hit you, and you get killed, right? I think that in the preliminary stages, they would consider that to be a homicide. Means that the fact pattern that they have currently is that you were killed by another person, right? A murder is that they have somebody that they can point to and say, this person killed this person intentionally. And I think that's where to draw the difference between a homicide and murder. I could be wrong on some points. I think I'm pretty accurate. Am I accurate? I'm not accurate. Give me the accuracy.
Manslaughter would be more of an accidental. Homicide is murder.
No, I'm talking about in a context. No, I'm talking about in the context of an autopsy, because the argument came up in court that the autopsy, she said a murder, or at least what they said was murder. The cause of death was murder, gunshot wound to the neck, and the correction was it's a homicide, gunshot wound to the neck. And I think that in that context, the difference between homicide and murder is whether you have a motive and intent to go along with how the person got murdered. If you don't have a suspect or anything, you don't even know where the shot came from or anything, they have to generically say that it was a homicide because you were killed, but they don't know how, they don't know why, they don't have the circumstances technically when they do the autopsy. So I think I'm kind of right. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see if there's any other questions. But yeah, what you were talking about, Brad, was more of whether or not it's first degree murder, second degree murder in the sense of the way somebody's charged. And I can go through that with you guys too. You know, the first degree murder is premeditated murder. Second degree murder is when somebody intentionally kill you. And manslaughter is typically when you do something negligent that result in the death of another person unintentionally. And in different states, they have different things, right? You know, if you unintentionally murder somebody, but your actions was gross and negligent and without due regard for human life, you could be charged with murder or second degree murder in certain states. In the state of Arizona, there's different levels to it. You know, first degree murder is obviously always premeditation. Second degree murder is you have to intentionally murder somebody. There's no gross negligence that leads to second degree murder. They just considered that manslaughter in Arizona. But it's different in different states, but generically speaking, and premeditation can be gained in an instance. Like if I was sitting here, just say I was sitting here and somebody yelled at me and said, Brandon, your podcast suck. And I push him down the stairs and kill him. I intentionally pushed him down there and killed him, right? I did that intentionally. But it was no premeditation. It was an instantaneous, I did this, I killed you. Now, premeditation is I see somebody standing by the stairs and I know they've been talking trash about my podcast for the last month now. And I say, next time they walk in front of the stairs, I'm going to go push them down there. And I push them down and they die, right? That's me premeditating. I created a premeditation in my mind. And premeditation can happen like this too, because a person could be at the stairs and we could be getting into a confrontation. And then I can say to myself, well, I'm going to push them down there to kill them, right? And it's not an instantaneous act of fury or, spontaneous. It's like I thought to myself, I'm going to push them to kill them down the stairs. That you can gain premeditation in that little window. All right, I think I'm almost over. Let's see. I hear you, but I'm gonna pass on that. Will he get the death penalty? What is Tyler's demeanor? Tyler Robinson's demeanor, I couldn't really tell. I think he never left the court when we did recess and stuff. He stayed in, or they may have taken him back to the back. I couldn't see his face. I only could see the back of his head because I sat like right behind him. I mean, nobody was doing anything extraordinary because the judge made it very clear that people can't do any outbursts or anything like that outside of an emotional thing. Obviously, if you see Charlie get killed, people want to cry and stuff like that. But anything outside of that, and in the period of his demeanor was anything other than just calm. Like from the back when I was looking, I could see the back of his head, and he wasn't doing anything but just sitting there and watching the clips and talking to his counsel every now and again. Will he get the death penalty? I think he should get the death penalty. The prosecution is going to need to, hump it a little bit. Cause you in order for you to put somebody to death, you got to be on it. You got to be all over it, on like Donkey Kong. You got to be whooping the defense so bad that they submit. Now, here's what I think should happen if I was a defense attorney. When the probable cause, because they haven't put in a plea yet, right? And there's no reason to put in a plea because the prosecution has to develop probable cause. And if they don't, there's no reason for you to plead guilty or not because they haven't even established probable cause. So I personally think if I was the defense team, if the judge finds probable cause at the end of this, they should just plea. They should plead guilty so he don't get the death penalty. Because there's so much, in my opinion, based on what I've seen and what they've presented so far and what they have presented in the past in the news, there's so much overwhelming evidence that if you make it to trial, it's gonna be a bad day. That's all I'm saying, based on what the evidence is suggested and has been presented so far. But we'll see at the end of this probable cause hearing if, in fact, they develop probable cause.